You love him. Host of Locked On Saints. Of course, does big things here for us, LouisianaSports.net. Ross, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, really glad to be here, man.
There
Thanks
he
for
is.
having me.
It's a time of the year where you get excited about certain players, but then you start to question certain players. It's like mini camp season, right? It's like you fall in love with these guys that aren't even going to be there in September, and then like you hate on these guys, and it's like the guys that the Saints are counting on the most. Like, it's one of my favorite times of the year to talk NFL, just because there's so much unknown already, like no matter what team you're talking about. But Ross, with this Saints team, they might have the most unknown of any team in the NFL.
Yeah, dude, they are one of the big mysteries of the league right now, and that's for certain. I mean, everything down to, obviously like who the starting quarterback is going to be is, of course, a mystery, but first-year head coach, first-year defensive coordinator in New Orleans, at least. You have a lot of turnover. You have offensive system changing, defensive system changing. There's so many big question marks around this team, not all of which bad, right? It's not question marks like, oh, are they going to be able to do this? Are they going to be able to do that? Though there are those things, it's a lot of question marks that also just center around what does this team look like? What is their new identity, and who are they as they move ahead? So makes them a big mystery this year in terms of trying to predict or project where things are going to go for them.
Give us your reaction. You brought up quarterbacks, so that's what I'm always going to lean to first and foremost, because it's the hardest position to play in all of sports. It's the most important position to play, and there's a bona fide QB competition right now. And we know both quarterbacks have had their moments where they've looked good, and we hear that it's been really efficient at practice. So I'm always kind of curious as to which one of these guys has anybody stepped in front as somebody that has looked like he's taken charge of the offense, taken charge of the line of scrimmage, looks more in control right now? I mean, you would usually side with the guy that's been there the longest that happens, but Spencer's only been there a year, so it's not like he's like a seasoned vet or anything. But is there one guy that stands out that's looked like he's kind of taking over from like just a verbal standpoint, from a present standpoint?
Yeah, look, I would say both of these guys have done things really well in those categories, but the one of the two that probably stands out the most there is Spencer Rattler. He's had a year of NFL experience, like you mentioned, which you're right, isn't a lot, but it is a big difference between having a year and not having a year. Like, that gap, I think, is bigger than, people outside of the game realize. And so I think that is something that has set Spencer Rattler up pretty well to kind of show out in OTAs and in minicamp. I have him with 59 passing attempts I have both quarterbacks with 59 passing attempts over the course of what we were able to see as media, with him completing 45. So you see an efficiency there. You see an efficiency in terms of his ability also to just kind of have a more sped up clock. Like, these guys haven't done any 11 on 11s. We should keep that in mind. It's all 7 on 7s or 9 on 7s. So literally every every passing lane is wide open, and all these other things from a trenches standpoint. But what we haven't seen Spencer Rattler do with a lack of pass rush is get comfortable and hold on to the ball and wait for receivers to make DBs cover 2 or 3 routes. He's operated in a take the snap, drop back, hitch, throw. Like, he just has his rhythm. Everything's on time, which is really important for a Kellen Moore offense, which is very much about timing. It's a lot of pre-snap designation, which kind of tells everybody what needs to be done protection-wise. And then in the passing game, it's a timing game, and that's probably going to look a little bit more familiar to Saints fans in terms of what they used to watch versus what they've seen in the recent past. And I think so far Spencer Rattler has just kind of gotten the timing of the offense pretty well, moves a little bit more efficiently, gets in and out of the huddle with a little bit more of a sense of urgency, gets through his reads, is using the entire field, kind of doing all these things. And he's operating on a clock that he doesn't need to operate on because he has all the time in the world, but he's not buying into that. And so I would say that those are the reasons why I would say that Spencer Rattler maybe stands out a little bit more in that category. But it is, both of these guys have shown proficiencies in that area for sure.
Yeah, I think it's kind of known in the NFL world that the biggest jump for a quarterback, any position really, but specifically at quarterback, the jump from year 1 to 2 is the most important.
Wild.
Like, it's the biggest gap that they cover from year 1 to 2.
Right.
And so, like, if you don't make that jump from 1 to 2, you're never going to have, like, it's hard to, like, make the jump on year 3, year 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it's going to be. So the fact that like Shough is competing with that and like keeping up with it and making it,
Right.
keeping up with a guy that is doing that. Like as Saints fans, you should hope that Spencer does take that jump that everybody talks about. And so the completion percentage you're talking about is great. It's a great stat, but just like you said, there's no 11 on 11. It's a glorified like playing catch out there. So it's going to be so widely important once they get the pads on, taking the snaps, guys hitting around them, all that stuff. But let's talk about the completion percentage. How are they spreading it? Like the receivers, who's kind of stepping up as a 2 or 3 receiver? How are the tight ends looking? Who are they feeding the ball to during these practices?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're seeing a lot of Chris Olave, you're seeing a lot of Rashid Shaheed. There's no doubt about that. That's exactly what you should expect, right? Like those are the top 2 guys when it comes to the passing game, all those pieces. And so those guys have been a core focus. But we've also seen this ball move around a lot. Tight ends like Michael Jacobson, as well as Juwan Johnson and Jack Stoll all getting involved. Running backs, I have completions written down to guys like Alvin Kamara, but I've also got completions written down to like Cam Akers, right? So some stuff, happening out of the backfield there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well. And so we're seeing sort of all 3 of the core positions, wide receiver, tight end, and running back when it comes to pass catching. We're seeing really all 3 of those areas getting opportunities. And one of the reasons why we're seeing that is because, like, if you look earlier on during OTAs, we saw a lot of downfield. They were pushing the ball downfield. We know these other things. But then when they got into mini camps, Kellen Moore kind of flipped the script on them and had them working on situations. So 3rd and short, 1st and 10, 2nd and long, all these other kinds of things. And so you were asked in that case as a quarterback to go out there and do what makes sense. So it wasn't always push it down the field or hit the intermediate area or try to make the big play, try to stand out in front of the fans that were in attendance, which could have really driven these guys to want to show out maybe a little bit more, hype the energy up, whatever. And instead, it was 3rd and 3, and you have a check down available behind the line of scrimmage that can get 3 yards after the catch to get you a first down. You take that. It's 2nd and 5. You have an opportunity to complete a slant for 3 to 5 yards and live for a 3rd down. You take that. And so we saw them also kind of work them through decision making with situational context. And I think that's another place where you kind of saw these guys stand out quite a bit, is that they didn't buy into the idea of pushing the ball down the field and trying to generate that excitement. They instead bought into the idea of making the throws that win football games. And I think that was a really smart move by Kellen Moore to kind of throttle them down to that point, even in those 7-on-7s or 9-on-7s, to just kind of make them think about an extra thing and kind of see how they operated in that context.
All right, so any young quarterback, Ross, is going to want to be able to turn around and hand it off to like a strong running game, a strong running back behind a strong offensive line. I want to go to running back because that's going to take a lot of pressure off whoever the starting quarterback is. We know AK is going to be the lead back, but you've made some moves. You've drafted running backs. You've signed veteran running backs in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You signed Cam Akers the other day. What does that position look like for you, certainly behind AK, because they're going to need more than just one guy, as we've seen over the last couple of years, and they've brought in a lot of different guys with a lot of different experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's 8 different running backs, I think, in the room right now, if I'm counting correctly. And they've brought them in from the draft, undrafted free agency, from free agency, guys that they retained as well. And so they have a really eclectic group here of, kind of smaller guys that are willing, that can run really well. They have the one-cut guys like Kendre Miller and Devin Neal. They have the veteran guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Cam Akers and Bayless Jones Jr., who has some versatility to his game. Like, they have a big kind of very eclectic group of these running backs. So I'm really interested to see where things go. The logic says, okay, you have Alvin Kamara, who has this incredible ability still going into year 9 in space and doing all the things that he does, outside of the tackles and in the receiving game and all of this stuff. So then the logic feels like, okay, so who's going to be kind of the between the tackles bruiser? If that's the way that the Saints go, then I think that's where guys like Cam Akers, Kendre Miller, I would even throw Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there. That's kind of where those guys come in. Devin Neal as well. And then you're looking for kind of a complementary third piece. So it's going to be a pretty major competition here. And keep in mind, too, the Saints kind of second-tier rusher that they've really leaned on for a long time and for many, many years has been Taysom Hill, not even a running back, right? But he might not be available at the beginning of the season. We'll see where things are for him from a health standpoint. But if they have to be without him, then they are really going to have to make sure that they're getting production in the run game from another player not named Alvin Kamara, as you mentioned. they might not have Taysom Hill to fall back on. And so whoever these running backs are that end up making the roster, I think a guy like Devin Neal feels like a clear, possibility as he was drafted by this organization. Kendra Miller has been around for a couple of years. So, those are the names that probably stand out. But really, any of these guys have a wide open path to making the roster based on what it is that they can do. And whoever gets those opportunities, they'll need to make the most of them, because the Saints are not going to have Taysom Hill to fall back on likely early on in the season in order to be able to complement that run game.
Yeah, Ross, let's flip to the other side of the ball here on defense. And new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, comes in, taking over, installing new defenses, new defensive schemes. So the Saints in the past have kind of always run like the Dennis Allen type of defense, where it's a little tricky. It's a little off pace for quarterbacks. They used to do a lot of 2 inverts and 2 fire zones, like some different situations. But what have you seen? I know it's hard when we don't have pads on. We're not doing 11 on 11. But what do you expect to see from the defense schematically? Is it a lot of 1 high, 2 highs? Have they been showing anything? Is what percentage pressure situations? Is he a high pressure guy? Have they shown any of that?
Yeah, I think I would expect, just looking back at Brandon Staley's track record, probably some middle of field closed type of defenses. So cover 1, cover 3, things like that kind of populate the middle of the field and then force, quarterbacks to look to the perimeter. But it's interesting because the NFL has really gone to kind of 2 high split safety looks as a means of trying to take away the big explosive plays and kind of force the run game. It's why we're watching offenses get bigger, more 2 tight end sets, more 2 running back sets, because that's a way to counter you're going to take away the big play over the top, but now you're light in the box. Let me go ahead and attack that. And so I think you're going to see a little bit of everything when it comes to Brandon Staley's defense. What I think that you'll notice as a big change from what Dennis Allen used to do is kind of a transition from sort of the press man back to the quarterback, eyes on the route runner type of scheme, to a more zone match, pattern matching, eyes in the backfield kind of coverage. And that's going to open up, and I've talked to a lot of the defensive players that'll be impacted by that, and a lot of them feel that it's going to open them up to go out there and make more plays. Like the Saints had, I think it was 11 interceptions over the course of the first 9 or so games, and then they had only 3 interceptions for the rest of the way throughout the rest of the season. And so this is a secondary that's hungry to go out there and make plays. And a lot of those members believe that what Brandon Staley's defense will do with allowing them to keep their eyes in the backfield should allow them to be able to kind of do that, read the quarterback's eyes, go out there, be attacking, be aggressive, and go try to make plays on the football. I think the other changes that you're going to see are the ones that, we've been talked about quite a bit with stand-up pass rushers and things like that, taking advantage of athleticism and speed. But I do think that those eyes in the backfield could help the Saints with another big thing that they've struggled with over the course of the past few years, and that's the mobile quarterback. It's a big difference when you have your back turned and that quarterback starts to run versus when the entire team or a majority of the team has their eyes on the quarterback on the majority of snaps, where they can maybe react and try to go and make some plays in that area too. So I think that's a couple of places where you'll see some differences.
Last one, Ross, and we always do appreciate the time catching up with Ross Jackson here on OTB. We've talked a lot about so many different players, so many drafted guys over the last couple of years that we expect big things on this team. But I do feel like a guy that still is not a part of the conversation, at least like on the airwaves sometimes, is Kool-Aid McKinstry. Mm-hmm. And you traded, for him. Like, there's a guy you moved up in the draft for just a year ago. What is his role? How impactful is he going to be? Because like with the assets you use, and anytime you select somebody in the second round, like that's got to be like a day one starter. His rookie year was okay, but what should we expect to see from Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I think you can expect good play from Kool-Aid and continued improvement from where he was last year. If you look at his season towards the end of last year, it just got better and better and better. Those last 3 games up against the I'm not going to try to do that. The last 3 games of the year, he was targeted over 10 times and allowed, fewer than, I think it was around 5 catches and things like that. And so, you kind of saw his game kind of step into the next phase there. And he's looked outstanding in minicamp as well as in OTAs. He's been one of the standout performers coming out of the offseason programs. And so I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be tasked with oftentimes being sort of the quote-unquote cornerback 1, which doesn't always mean that he's going to be lined up across the best receiver because they're going to move receivers in and out of the slot, things like that. So that'll kind of change a little bit of what those coverage assignments are. But I assume that he will be the number one guy for this team at corner. He's been really disruptive at the catch point. He's super sound fundamentally, which makes him a coach's dream as well because he's not having to rely on just raw talent. The raw talent adds to what he does well from a foundational standpoint, and then he can build upon that. So I think he'll continue to get better, especially as there's more time for him, as well as when there's a pass rush introduced. That should help him out quite a bit too. And so I think we've seen some good things for him, but I think good things, like more are on the way when it comes to Kool-Aid McKinstry. I'm really interested and excited to see his 2025 season.
All right, he's our guy, Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net, always putting out great articles on the New Orleans Saints and keeping you up to date. Ross, we appreciate the time as always, sir. Look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate you all. Take care. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.